You won't find any tennis goats where the racket drops and the racket face is open on the backhand side. Casper Ruud's backhand does drop open. We're going to cover a couple different topics in this video. We're going to go over how to hit your backhand harder and more consistent. We're going to go over how to make changes. And I'm going to give you a few drills to help you along the way as well. So if you've been a part of this YouTube channel for any amount of time, you know that getting your racket face below the ball and hooded on ground strokes is super important. This is based on two ideas. One, your arms work on a radius. So if you're closed at the bottom, your racket's going to be nearly vertical at contact. Two, you simply can't change the racket face angle at contact with the ball. If you do try to do this, all you're going to do is have a shot that requires more timing and requires you to use more smaller muscles, which is going to slow your racket face down. Now, although we will see some great backhand players initially take their racket face back slightly open, I promise you, any great backhand is getting the racket face below the ball and closed very consistently. In the case of Casper Ruud, his racket face drops open consistently, even into the hit where he has to make that angular change through contact. And that's why we see Casper Ruud right now in the process of making this change. Now, I'm not cherry picking this footage. I've been consistently keeping an eye on Casper, watching his backhand, and he's clearly doing something different. In this case, he's trying to close his racket face more at the bottom. Now, when you are making a change, much like Casper Ruud, we see you go back and forth from the old to the new a little, but he's definitely more consistently taking a better swing where he's closing his racket face better. We also know Casper Ruud is going through a change because we see the pain. You don't often see an ex-number 2 in the world player hit a backhand straight into the ground 4 feet before the net. So yes, at first you have to think about what you're doing. I know nobody wants to hear that, but you have to go back to a cognitive stage of development where you're taking in information and focusing on this checkpoint, at very least in practice. And it's also going to hurt. Very common when I first start to get people to close their racket face towards the ground, they miss short or in the ground. That's because there's always secondary and tertiary changes that have to go along with it. These are subtle, but you have to go out and experiment with them. I like to do my intentional grounding drill, where I'll have people not with their grip, but just go out and exaggerate the racket face so closed that the ball intentionally just goes straight into the ground. And then you want to stay there with that and then figure out how to more swing through the ball so that you're getting that ball to grab again so you can start to get your elevation back. But here's the other problem. Now Casper Ruud has another change to make. He's gone through his entire career accepting that my backhand's steady, I'm going to get it back, I'm not going to miss, but it's not going to be a weapon. Because Casper Ruud has accepted, hey, my backhand's not a weapon, it's just my steady shot, I'm just going to get it back, he's more likely to try to look for opportunities to get around it to hit his more competent forehand. Over and over, I see this pattern from pro players where they run around their backhand and they hit a forehand. And sure, it's a big forehand, it keeps control of point, but then they have to recover 2 or 3 steps back to the middle. And you can just look at it and say, what's the problem? They still got the next ball, but oftentimes you'll see that next ball was a little shorter and they could have taken advantage of it, but they couldn't because they were still regaining position. Or they end up having to reach for the next ball, which goes on to cause them to lose the point. So what if Casper Ruud stayed in the pocket, had a backhand that would allow him to go cut off the angle and hit a heavy, powerful backhand? He'd be creating even more opportunities to set up his next ball, many of those which could be the forehand. And this could lead to him optimizing his true potential, which is what I think he's trying to do right now. I often think back to a recent Australian Open where Djokovic was praised for all his forehand winners. But he wasn't praised for the fact that he hit 92 more backhands than his opponents. I'm not saying your backhand has to be your stronger shot, but you just don't have to settle for just getting it back and being steady. Here's another drill to make your backhand more like your forehand. First, drop hit a forehand, your beautiful forehand. Then what I want you to do is turn for a backhand and just take your bottom hand off the racket and try to duplicate that stroke with your left hand on the other side. Do a rotation going from right-handed forehands to left-handed forehands to two-handed backhands. See if you can feel the symmetry off both sides where that racket face is behaving the same way in order to create an effective shot. Good luck to Casper Ruud, and good luck to you to improve that backhand. Don't just settle for getting it back, make it a weapon. I'll see you next time.